From Atlanta, Georgia, it's the Zach Ballinger Show, where we help you find your direction through passion and purpose. My name is Zach Ballinger. I am your host. Thank you guys so much for joining us. We have a really great guest today. Before we get started, there are two ways you can interact with the show. Email me, Zach, Z-A-C-K, at ZachBallinger.com. If you have any questions for me and my guests, feel free to pop them into the email. Also, we are streaming via YouTube Live. If you're not subscribing, please subscribe there. You can catch all of our content as we go live. Without further ado, Kyle, thank you so much for joining the show.
Thanks for having me on, Zach. This is a great show.
So, Kyle, I'll just jump right in here to the questions. Can you tell me a little bit about your career and what do you do?
More than happy to, Zach. It's a privilege. I am the director of operations at a small software company called Sandhills Development. And we make primarily WordPress plugins and do a lot of e-commerce related things. I focus on everything internal here at the company. My customers, if you will, are everyone who works at this company. And to the best of my abilities, it is my job to make sure they are happy and productive and fulfilled. I get up every day thinking about how I can make this company a better place to work and how to make the company operate more efficiently and effectively.
And so that's pretty cool. So as far as director of operations, obviously, probably people don't start out with that title. How did you get to where you are? What career pathway led you to your current career now?
Right. Of course, we all take a winding road these days, don't we? It certainly wasn't my plan or even on my radar. And I'd venture to guess that a lot of your listeners can relate to that. We all find ourselves in places and ask ourselves, how did we get here? When I started going back into 2011, I started my own marketing agency. And there are different places to start the story, but I'll start there. That's when I started my own business. And I started using WordPress to build websites for my clients. And before long, I started attending local meetup groups and conferences devoted to the software. And through these events and some online channels, I got to know this WordPress community, and which is huge and vibrant and truly amazing. I recall going to some early events and being just blown away by how welcoming and supportive everyone in this community was. I knew so little and needed so much help at the time. I was just a beginner, barely knew more than my clients did, and had all kinds of problems. After person, with nothing to gain or sell, volunteered to help me out. And it was amazing. This was not the experience I expected based on my limited experience in the professional world and my business education. And I just loved it. I absolutely loved it. So it thrilled me to discover that an entire ecosystem existed, which was not cutthroat, was not dog eat dog like I was used to, but rather genuinely supportive, collaborative community. Because of that, I dove in deep and spent the next 5 years heavily immersed in all things WordPress. I organized meetups, I organized conferences, I volunteered, I contributed on online forums, I hosted my own podcasts, I blogged, I spoke at conferences, I developed my own products on the platform, and so on and so on. Because of my heavy involvement in that community, I developed a reputation and a ton of connections. Also, during that time, I slowly was coming to the realization that I didn't want to run a marketing agency. In fact, I didn't want to have clients at all. I wanted to work instead for a product company. That was a painful, slow process. It took years, but I had to decouple my identity from the brand I had built and open myself up to other opportunities. And once I finally did that, I started looking at my industry connections and made a list of places I'd be interested in working at. And I started with my top choice by reaching out directly to the founder and point blank telling him, I want to work for you. And he said, okay, let's do it. Let me make up a position for you. 4 years later, I'm still with that company, though serving in a very different role at this time.
And so why did that, just honing in on that, why did that, you reached out to him, you asked for a position, he made it happen. Why did he do that for you?
Well, I've never asked him, asked him that question, but we had a relationship. And that's the thing. I had a lot of connections, as I said. I had made somewhat of a name for myself in this community, not necessarily by doing a ton of great things, but just by being active. I was present everywhere. I was at all these events. I was speaking on the stages. I was volunteering here and there. I was getting interviewed on other podcasts and interviewing other people on my podcast and so on. And you just couldn't go too far without eventually encountering me. And so I had all these connections and friends and people that I admired the way that they ran their company, and developed relationships with some of them. There's lots of like conference after parties. We'd spend a lot of time hanging out and talking and getting to know each other. There's lots of online forums and Slack groups where we'd be having conversations and sharing our experiences. And so there was a good list of people that I said I would be happy to work with or for that person. And the person I'm working for now is the top of that list, someone I highly admire, running a great company. And they knew me and were familiar with my work and felt good about the quality of the work that I have shared with the world and the way I'd interacted with their company before. This company, as a lot of small companies in our industry, have a history of kind of hiring from within their community. And that was kind of a shortcut for me.
Bingo. And that's what I was looking for, because, we teach millennials and young people all the time. It's all about networking and your connections and your relationships. You just gave an example of why that's so important. In other words, if you're out there, you're not going to email the CEO at Coke and say, hey, I want to work with you. That person, you had a relationship, they saw your professional skills, you demonstrated it to them, they knew you were qualified, you built up the gumption, you networked, you knew a lot of people. When you asked that question, then it was a no-brainer to that particular employee. So I think that's why it's such a powerful example of why I wanted to kind of highlight on it.
Absolutely.
People out there.
You know this stuff, Zach. You're the expert.
I don't know about that. Sometimes, some days I'm not, and some days I am, but I appreciate that. So the next question is, what do you love about your job? Now you're the director of operations. What are you passionate about? What drives you?
Oh, great. Fun question, and something I love talking about. I am so fortunate, Zach. It's true that there are some boring and stressful parts of my job, but the truth is, the reality here is I get to do a lot of really cool stuff and have incredible freedom also to work on whatever I choose, which I greatly appreciate. Like, having an entrepreneurial background, I'm kind of used to doing what I want when I want. And I have that luxury at this current job. Now, the huge difference between what I do now versus every other job I've ever had is that I am now leveraging my natural talent and passion, as opposed to leveraging knowledge I have accrued. In the past, I was, for example, asked to do some marketing related things. And so I learned marketing and then continued to do marketing things for years. It wasn't because I was born with a passion for marketing. It was just what I knew. Now, I am doing exactly what I feel like I was meant to do, and that is help other people be happy here at their jobs. That has always been my personality. I'm as happy as the least happy person in the room. I find joy in looking around and seeing other people enjoy themselves. Now, my responsibilities as director of operations are primarily to make this an amazing place to work, which is something I'd love to dive into more with you if you like.
Sure. Yeah. So how do you create that environment? A lot of people out there, Kyle, they're not working in that type of environment. Otherwise, they probably wouldn't be listening to the show. Or other people are taking, hey, who knows, they're taking career development in their own hands. But how do corporations create this type of environment?
Yeah. There's a lot that goes into it. And this has been a fun learning process for me. I learned a lot running my own company and in this role with this other larger organization. But I think one of the things that it really starts with is defining and emphasizing your values as an organization. It's really hard to get very far and to be truly successful at this if you haven't identified what your organizational values are. And then the next thing to do is to design the company so that those values are apparent. The litmus test here is to see if someone can guess what your values are based on observing the company. And if they can, you're doing a good job of incorporating those values into the DNA of the company. Now, the next few steps are to make sure that you never stop improving. There's never going to be a point where you've done it, you've made a company that works really well, a well-oiled machine, and you can take your hands off of it. It's a constant challenge. And also communicate your company roadmap to your employees is an excellent practice, so that employees feel invested and understand where the company is going, how they play a role in that. If you have aspirations of being able to offer something different to the company, if you want part-time employees to be full-time employees in the future, if you want to introduce a 401k plan but you don't have the budget for it yet, if you want to begin expanding a department and bringing in more staff in the future, it's important that you involve your current employees in that plan and let them see the roadmap and understand what goals it is necessary to achieve before these things become possible. So those are some of the keys, broadly speaking. This is generic advice for any kind of business to being successful at making a great place to work.
I think it's great advice. I appreciate you sharing that, because a lot of companies don't do that. And, communication behind those incentives and rewards and environments are certainly key. And it's a lot of people say it's not about what I do, it's who I work for is the reason I stay at a current company. And so people love people and they're loyal to that person sometimes. And I hear that as I go around. So pretty cool what you're doing. Now, on the flip side, some people have a hard time with this question. Other people say, oh, I know what it is. What's something that might be challenging about your job or difficult into the day-to-day operations that people should know about?
Sure. Yeah, I'm happy to. Let me go off the cuff and riff on this just a little bit. I think that the challenge for me personally, and this is part of what makes me great at this job, but also part of what makes it a real struggle. And that's because I'm a pleaser and I want to make everyone happy and fulfilled here. I'm really driven to do that. And we have a growing team and a lot of diverse personalities and backgrounds and interests and career paths, and everyone's position and future are all so different. And I am so driven from the day I wake up to the day I go to bed to try and make this a fulfilling experience for everyone, to make them productive, to make them happy and satisfied here. But everyone is different and everyone's needs are very different. And often I'm faced with choices to make, which will be beneficial to some parties and detrimental to others. There's all kinds of dilemmas that I face every single day. We have introverts and extroverts on the team, and sometimes I want to do something to improve our culture and morale and engage the team, and there are going to be parties in the organization who are not into it, and others who are really excited about it. What am I supposed to do with that? This is a constant challenge. And if I hire for a role in one department, another department is wishing they could be helped more, and how we allocate our budget across the organization and how we define our culture and values, all of these things present constant dilemmas about who is going to be getting the top priority and whose needs are going to be met, whose interests are going to be focused on.
Thanks for opening up about that. I can certainly understand that. As a people pleaser, like you said, you're not going to be able to please everyone. So there's probably some difficult decisions to be made and you have to roll that out in a very sensitive manner. So appreciate you sharing that. Now, what's your educational background? Did you major in marketing, or can you walk us through that?
It's pretty straightforward. I attended community college for a little while. I got an associate's degree, and then I got a bachelor's degree in business administration from a local college that you've never heard of. And then I got an internship that turned into a role at an agency and started my own business and fast-tracked myself to where I am today. So sitting on a bachelor's degree in business, which I think was important. And I probably wouldn't have felt comfortable running my own business had I not learned a lot of the fundamentals in college. But here I am doing something totally different in the end.
Let's take you back in a time machine, and we're going to go back to your past, whether it's second, third, fourth, or fifth grade, and you were growing up, you were little. Was there a dream career you always dreamed about being?
I wouldn't say always. I would say that there was a dream career at most different stages in my youth. The earliest that I can recall, probably anytime before the age of 10, was something to do with animals, like a zookeeper, which I know previous guests of yours, I think, have said similar things. Animals just are so endearing. They always have been to me, like just so amazing. I feel like an animal groupie sometimes. Like some friends who get really excited about opportunities to meet and greet a celebrity at some event and geek out and take a selfie with them. That's kind of the enthusiasm that I have for exotic animals at the zoo. Like, this is the most amazing thing. I want to spend all day here just looking at the animals. That was my youth. In my teenage years, probably playing in the NBA was the goal, and then it was other things like being a library manager. When I got my first job at a library, I thought libraries were so cool. I thought my future would be there. It didn't end up working out quite that way.
Yeah, I had the NBA exasperations as well. But when you're 200 pounds and can only jump 2 inches, that will only take you to a certain level, my friend. But it is interesting, you can trace back a lot of times. I tell people you can trace back your passions and your dreams to maybe something a little bit different. So you had this, you think about your dreams and your what you liked, and you think of animals and that caring nature, and you kind of translate it to what you're doing now, that caring nature to your employees, or like basketball. Maybe it's a team sport, so you're working as a group, as a team. And so I think a lot of times we can find, sometimes looking back at our past, our dreams were actually there. We just got to overcome them and apply it to the marketplace sometimes.
You're absolutely right. I've always been more attracted to team sports versus individual sports, basketball over golf every day. I've never been able to play single player video games at all. Only multiplayer can captivate my attention for any amount of time. And this job that I have now has made me harken back to days when I was younger. I come from a big family. I'm the oldest of 7 children, and we had a lot of friends and family gatherings in the early days. And I've had, for most of my life, the role in the family and our group of friends of being the organizer, the leader, the one who says, hey, everybody, here's what we're going to do. We're going to go out and we're going to have a party. We're going to make a movie. We're going to throw some kind of an event. We're going to go on some adventure. And I've always been sort of the leader, trying to orchestrate experiences that bring people together and make them all have a good time collectively. And today I feel like I'm doing that all over again.
And what kind of what does your typical day look like? I know that's hard for professionals, because when you wake up, every day's different. There's no one day usually that's the same. But if you had to describe it, because I do encourage people to job shadow. So if they were with you one day, they woke up with you, had a cup of coffee, they left the office, whether it be home or you're in a physical setting, what does that look like?
Yeah, absolutely. I have been working from home for about the last 9 years, and a typical day currently, I'm going to wake up in the middle of the night with our twins, because we have babies, and they're going to get me up to feed them for an hour, and then we'll go back to sleep for a couple hours, hopefully. Then I'm going to get up and consume my coffee and other miscellaneous notifications, emails and Basecamp threads and Slack threads and so on that pertain to me as I get in the zone. Then I'm going to proceed probably into a decent amount of meetings. I am spending a lot of time with colleagues, mostly learning about what everyone is struggling with. I invest a lot of my time into just probing throughout the organization, trying to check the pulse, trying to see who is stressed, who is overburdened, who is struggling with communicating between departments and their colleagues, who is feeling a little overwhelmed or burnt out. What is going on in this organization? So I'm always trying to inquire about that and see what our pain points are, and take that and meditate on that and use it to inform the priorities that I then work on. So then the next thing would be my project related work, which could be planning a team related event, ordering swag or equipment for people who need something, writing up new company policies, researching various ways to improve our processes, pitching new initiatives to leadership, and plenty more.
Gotcha. Thank you so much for sharing. So I did want to get to some of these questions that did arrive. Kyle, the first question that comes in for you is, I'm an introvert. I know you got your job by reaching out and networking. How does someone do that when they have a shy personality?
Yeah, that is an important question, because I relate to this question because it was early in my career that I never had any aspirations to do anything like this. I never wanted to speak publicly or get on a stage or do podcasting or anything of that nature. But I looked around and I saw some people doing those things and marveled at how quickly they climbed the ladder. They got the opportunities, the big responsibilities. They got to be involved in things. And it just struck me that I guess if I could go and learn that, I'll be on the fast track. So that's what I'll do. It doesn't sound that fun, but I'll do it anyway because it seems to work. It seems to be the shortcut, the cheat code, whatever it is to fast track yourself. Being willing to stand up even if you don't want to. So part of it is kind of getting over my own inhibitions and dealing with it. Now, that's harder for some than others. I am not the most uncomfortable with it, though it's not ever been something that excited me until lately. But if you are the introverted, shy person, very uncomfortable with kind of putting yourself out there in general, I think that there are a lot of different ways that we can contribute public things. And that's kind of the key. I have met people who maybe are uncomfortable, speaking at events, but are comfortable volunteering at them. They might, sit behind the table and do the registration or introduce people and so on. That's not too intimidating. Maybe some people aren't interested in doing a live broadcast like that, but this would be comfortable writing some blog posts or answering questions on public forums. There are a lot of different ways to more or less participate in an industry, in communities within your industry. Even if you're the kind of person who doesn't want to hear their voice recorded or stand in front of an audience, there are a lot of ways to contribute. So I would encourage everyone to explore those different mediums, find things that might work for you. It might be podcasting. It might be some videos just from the safety of your own office. It might just be writing, or it might be just chatting it up in Slack groups.
Yeah, and I think those are great points. And I think, in the old days, we didn't have LinkedIn. I had a BlackBerry when I started, and so we didn't have those type of apps. And so we had to do a lot of hand-to-hand combat where you had to go up to somebody and say, "Hey, I'm Zach Ballinger. Here's what I do. I'd like to meet you. What do you do? What's your career?" And now I think LinkedIn's made it possible for even introverted people to reach out via texting, via message on a computer, and maybe set up time with one-on-one with a person. If you're shy, instead of doing a group activity, reach out to one person at a company. If you want to work for Coca-Cola or IBM, reach out to somebody there. The worst they can do is ignore you. Probably what will happen. Some people will say yes. And when they say yes, you might want to do an Uber Eats. Since we're in this virtual format, send some food over to their house, talk 30 minutes, ask them about their career, keep in touch, network, share your skills and your abilities, and keep up with them. So I think you bring up really good points in that. And so thank you for sharing. The next question comes in. It was a technical question. Is you mentioned WordPress. Can you explain more about what that is and what that means?
Sure thing. Yeah, WordPress is open source, free software which people use to build websites. It was invented in 2003. It's pretty old and mature right now. And when I first started using it, it was becoming the most popular option, but not the dominant platform that it has become today. It rose to prominence like 10 years ago and became basically the most common way that people build websites. Now it's the overwhelming majority. Approximately 40% of websites today are built using WordPress, and there's not really a runner-up. The next most common platform is like less than 5%. So WordPress is extremely popular and powers the majority of the websites you probably encounter on a daily basis. And when I was running an agency and people came to us and said, "I want to put up a website," we said, "No problem. I'll take care of that. I'm just going to install WordPress and write a little bit of custom code to make a theme for you. And as we got more advanced, we were developing custom plugins for more sophisticated functionality our customers required. WordPress inherently is a very flexible and customizable platform. And thus, if you know how to write a little bit of code and follow some simple online tutorials, there's an abundance of them. You can just about make WordPress do anything you dream of. And it's all free. Fundamentally, the basic software is free. And we run a WordPress plugin company, Sandhills Development, the company I work for. And we sell some premium plugins that people can purchase if they need specific functionality on their WordPress site.
So that was actually one of the questions. It says you're a director of operations for a software company. What type of software does your company do? So that you kind of just hit the nail on the head.
That's
with
right.
that.
Mm-hmm.
So the plugins, you mean just for people out there that may not be as tech savvy, what are plugins? Like, could you explain that?
Yeah, plugins. The most appropriate analogy that can be used is like an app for your website. You want to do special things with your cell phone, with your smartphone, you can install an app to accomplish that. And if you want to do customize unique bespoke things on your WordPress site, you would install a plugin to accomplish that. They introduce new functionality to your site.
Gotcha. Last question. It says, do you recommend any certifications for software developers to get after they've completed a 4-year degree?
Yeah, that's a great question. Software development is one of those professions right now, and this would be a fun conversation another day to go into greater detail, because I'm not a software developer by trade. I have done it in the past, but we employ a lot of software developers, and I spend a lot of time working on what their duties are, their descriptions of their jobs, how they are compensated, and how we recruit the best ones in the business, and so on. So I do spend a lot of time thinking about that. And software developers are in high demand these days. And the reality is, when you're in a high demand profession where the market has a greater need for people with these skills than there actually are available, there are more jobs than people to do those jobs for this particular profession. And this is like inflating the salaries pretty high. So you get paid pretty well for a lot of cushy jobs as software developers, relatively speaking. This is my opinion. And you become very, very employable as you learn software development. And the gist of what I'm getting at is that I think there are so many opportunities that while there's a lot of certifications and maybe even degrees that you could get that would be beneficial, if you even just learn the basics, you're quickly employable. And those other things they just help make you a little bit more competitive in the market. But software development is a great field to get into right now. Who knows if it'll always be this way, if a time will come where software developer becomes the blue collar work in the future and there are more people than jobs. That is not the reality today. You can be a mediocre software developer and get paid well and have companies fighting over you. That's the reality.
Yeah, and I like it. This old saying they say in the South, it's gravy on the biscuit. So once you get a job in a software company, you got your 4-year degree. Once you get into that company, they're going to, kind of expose you to their world. There might be certifications pop up that you can do on the side to keep your skills and talents relative on a career development pathway. But there'll be certainly opportunities once you plug in, if you will, no pun intended, with the company and get it connected there, and they'll have development opportunities, like you said, and all that. Those certifications and things can make you more marketable, maybe for a different company, maybe for a higher salary, but you'll learn that once you're employed, and it is gravy on the biscuit, if you will. So Kyle, thank you so much for joining the show. This has been so helpful. You've been great about this. We know you're really busy. You're running a company almost, for goodness sake. So we appreciate you coming on, just sharing your knowledge about career development, your own career. It's been great. A lot of good feedback. And where can folks find you if they want to connect, or anything that you wanted to mention?
Yeah, I would recommend just coming to a coffee shop here in Jackson, Michigan, and maybe we'll sit down and have a cup of Joe. But if that's not possible, I'm online too, and love talking about everything that we discussed and everything that has to do with WordPress and career development and running remote operations for software companies and so on. That's great. I'm on Twitter at Mr. Kyle Maurer. I don't know if there will be links available and stuff like that. I have a blog, kyleblog.net. Company I work for, sandhillsdev.com, is a great company and we'll probably be hiring before too long. And I thank you so much, Zach, for having me on this program. It's been so much fun.
Yeah, we appreciate it. And so we'll put those links into the bottom of the video in a couple of hours where they'll be able to be seen there. So Kyle, thank you so much and have a great day.
You as well.